step out here right now.
I'm fine where I am. You haven't told me why you're here.
I said step outside. Don't make this harder than
Without a warrant, you don't come in my house. Fourth Amendment, I'm not stepping out. Last chance.
This wasn't just another police encounter. This was the moment Officer Scott Harland, badge number 6129, made the worst decision of his 14-year career. The man standing in that doorway, wearing an orange shirt and standing firm in the threshold of his own home, wasn't a criminal. He wasn't a trespasser. He wasn't even a civilian unfamiliar with the law. He was Derek Vaughn, retired deputy sheriff, badge number 2847, 22 years of service. And every second of what was about to happen was being recorded in 1080p high definition. What Harland saw was a black man in an expensive neighborhood. What the doorbell camera captured was a grotesque abuse of power that would cost Harland everything: his badge, his pension, his home, his marriage, and eventually his freedom. The lawsuit? $6.8 million. Not against the department, against him personally. And the judge made sure he couldn't hide behind bankruptcy. In America, a black person is 3.5 times more likely to be killed by police than a white person, even when unarmed. But what happens when that black person is the police? When they've worn the badge, taken the oath, and still get treated like a threat in their own home? Derek Vaughn was about to answer that question, and the answer would change everything. This is the story of how one officer's racial bias turned a Ring doorbell into a $6.8 million piece of evidence. This is the story of how instant karma became instant justice. And this is the story of why the phrase, "I know my rights," can be the most powerful weapon against those who abuse theirs. If you believe that every person's home is their castle, regardless of the color of their skin, then you need to hear what happened on Oakmont Drive. Derek Vaughn had given 22 years to the badge, 22 years of night shifts, domestic disputes, armed robberies, and highway pursuits. 22 years of missing birthdays, holidays, and quiet weekends because someone had to keep the peace. He'd been stabbed once, shot at twice, and commended 3 times for bravery that most people only see in movies. But on this Saturday afternoon in May, Derek wasn't thinking about any of that. He was thinking about his lawn. The house on Oakmont Drive was everything he'd worked for. Modern architecture, floor-to-ceiling windows, a 2-car garage, and a yard that backed up to a greenbelt. It was the kind of neighborhood where people jogged with expensive strollers and retired early because they'd invested wisely. Derek and his wife, Nicole, had closed on the house 3 months ago, and he still got a quiet thrill every time he pulled into the driveway. He was wearing an orange shirt and old jeans, pushing a yellow electric mower across the front lawn. The neighbors, mostly white, mostly friendly, had waved when he moved in. The Johnsons brought cookies. The Patel family invited them to a block party. It was everything the American dream promised. Derek didn't know that 2 blocks away, Officer Scott Harland was watching him. Derek Vaughn did everything right. He worked hard. He bought a home in a good neighborhood. He was outside in broad daylight doing yard work. So why did he still look suspicious? Is it the neighborhood? The house? Or is it the only thing Derek can't change? His skin? Officer Scott Harland had been with the Metro Police Department for 14 years. On paper, he was a decorated patrol officer. In reality, he was a walking lawsuit waiting to happen. His internal affairs file told the real story. Complaint number 1, excessive force during a traffic stop, dismissed. Complaint number 4, racial slurs during an arrest, insufficient evidence. Complaint number 7, illegal search of a vehicle, settled quietly. Complaint number 14, tasing a handcuffed suspect, sustained, but only resulted in a written reprimand. 13 of those 14 complaints came from Black or Latino residents. Harland's defense was always the same. I was following my training. I feared for my safety. On this particular Saturday, son Harland was patrolling the affluent West Side, a neighborhood he believed was his to protect. When he saw Derek mowing the lawn, his brain made an instant calculation. Black man, expensive house, must be the help. Or worse, a squatter. Harland circled the block, twice. He watched Derek wave to a passing neighbor. He watched him stop to wipe sweat from his forehead. And in Harland's mind, every innocent gesture became suspicious behavior. He parked his cruiser at the curb, adjusted his body camera, which he would later claim malfunctioned, and approached. A 2020 study found that black homeowners are 50% more likely to be questioned by police in their own neighborhoods than white homeowners. The assumption isn't homeowner, it's threat. And that assumption, as Derek was about to learn, can be deadly. Derek heard the footsteps on his walkway and looked up. He saw the uniform first, then the badge, then the expression. He'd seen that expression before, on the faces of officers he'd worked with, on the faces of officers he'd supervised, and sometimes, shamefully, in the mirror early in his career. It was the look of someone who'd already decided you were guilty. "Afternoon, officer," Derek said, turning off the mower. "Something I can help you with?" Harland didn't return the greeting. "You live here?" Derek felt the first prickle of unease. Not fear. He'd faced down armed suspects without flinching, but the recognition of where this was heading. "Yes, sir. I'm the homeowner. Just moved in a few months ago. Can I see some ID? Am I being detained?" Harland's jaw tightened. I asked you a question." "And I asked you one," Derek replied evenly. "Am I being detained? Do you have reasonable suspicion that I've committed a crime?" The Ring doorbell camera on Derek's porch was recording every word. Harland's hand drifted toward his belt, not to his gun, but to his taser. "I'm gonna need you to step outside." "I'm already outside. I'm on my property." "Step out here," Harland gestured to the sidewalk. "Away from the house." Derek's training kicked in. He knew what Harland was doing, trying to create distance from the threshold so he could claim Derek had, voluntarily, moved into a public space where rights were more ambiguous. "Officer, with all due respect, I'm not stepping anywhere. I haven't committed a crime. You have no reasonable suspicion. And unless you have a warrant, or you have no authority to give me orders on my own property." Harland's face flushed red. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone he'd already dismissed as a criminal. "Last chance. Step outside now." Derek stood his ground. "I'm invoking my Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure. If you want to come inside my home, get a warrant. The Fourth Amendment protects you from warrantless entry into your home, but only if you assert it. Police can't enter without a warrant, consent, or exigent circumstances, imminent danger." Derek knew the law. Most people don't, and that difference can mean everything. Harland's hand was fully on his taser now. "You're being non-compliant." "I'm being constitutional," Derek corrected. "There's a difference." That's when Nicole appeared in the doorway behind Derek. She'd heard the tone shift from the kitchen. She pulled out her phone and started recording. "Ma'am, put that phone down," Harland barked. "It's my property. I can record on my property." Nicole's voice was steady, but Derek could hear the tremor underneath. She was scared. So was he. But they both knew that showing fear to someone like Harland was like showing blood to a shark. "Both of you, step outside, or I'm placing you both under arrest." "For what crime?" Derek asked. "Obstruction." "Of what?" "I'm standing in my doorway. I haven't obstructed anything." Harland pulled his taser. "I'm not going to ask again." Derek's heartbeat spiked. He'd seen this before. Escalation based on ego, not law. And he'd seen officers like Harland turn a traffic stop into a fatality because someone asked why. He'd sat through internal affairs reviews where body camera footage showed the exact moment an officer decided that pride mattered more than protocol. He'd just never been on this side of it. "Officer, I am not resisting. I am not fleeing. I am simply asserting my constitutional rights. You have no probable cause, no exigent circumstances, and no legal authority to enter this residence. I am asking you, clearly and calmly, to leave my property." Harland's finger moved to the trigger of the taser. "3. Nicole gasped. "Derek, just..." 2. Derek didn't move. He couldn't. If he stepped outside, Harland would arrest him anyway, and the narrative would be, "Suspect refused to comply." If he stayed, at least the ring camera would show the truth. No, 1. Derek had 22 years of experience. He knew the law. He knew his rights. He knew how to de-escalate, and none of it mattered. Because in that moment, Officer Harland wasn't seeing a homeowner, a veteran, or even a human being. He was seeing a black man who dared to say no. And for that, Derek was about to pay a price that no amount of compliance could have prevented. Harland didn't wait for 0. He shoved past Derek, forcing entry into the home. Derek instinctively stepped back, not resisting, just avoiding collision. But Harland interpreted the movement as aggression. "Gun!" Harland shouted, though Derek was unarmed. And then he fired. The taser probe struck Derek in the chest. 50,000 volts of electricity surged through his body. His muscles seized. His legs buckled. He collapsed onto the marble entryway, convulsing, and unable to control his limbs or his breathing. Nicole screamed. The Ring doorbell camera captured it all in perfect high definition. The illegal entry, the lack of resistance, the moment Harland's taser turned a homeowner into a convulsing body on the floor. Harland didn't stop. He flipped Derek onto his stomach, wrenched his arms behind his back, and cuffed him, digging a knee into Derek's spine while he was still twitching from the electrical current. "Stop resisting!" Harland yelled, even though Derek couldn't move. Nicole was crying, still recording. "He's a deputy! He's a sheriff's deputy! You just tased a cop!" Harland froze. "What?" "Badge number 2847. He's retired. He's a deputy!" Harland's face went pale. He looked down at Derek, still cuffed, still trembling. He looked at Nicole's phone. He looked at the Ring camera. And for the first time in 14 years, Scott Harland realized he'd made a mistake he couldn't talk his way out of. If Derek had been white, would Harland have circled the block twice? Would he have demanded ID for mowing a lawn? Would he have tased a man in his own doorway for invoking his constitutional rights? The answer matters. Because the taser didn't just deliver 50,000 volts. It delivered a truth that America has tried to ignore for centuries. Your rights are only as strong as the bias of the officer enforcing them. 8 minutes later, Sergeant Patricia Monroe pulled up. She'd been dispatched for "officer needs assistance," which usually meant a physical altercation or a dangerous suspect. What she found was Officer Harland standing over a handcuffed black man in an expensive home, looking like he'd just seen a ghost. "No, what happened?" Monroe asked, stepping inside. "Suspicious activity," Harland stammered. He refused to comply. He was aggressive. Monroe looked at Derek, still on the floor, still cuffed, his orange shirt torn where the taser probes had pierced fabric and skin. She looked at Nicole, tears streaming down her face, phone still recording. She looked at the Ring camera, its blue light blinking. "Uncuff him," Monroe said quietly. "Sarge, now." Harland uncuffed Derek, who slowly sat up, wincing. Monroe knelt beside him. "Sir, I need to ask you some questions. What's your name?" "Derek Vaughn." "And you live here?" "Yes, ma'am, for 3 months." "What do you do for a living, Mr. Vaughn?" Derek looked her in the eye. "I'm retired. Sheriff's Department. Badge number 2847. On 22 years of service." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Monroe stood slowly, her face a careful mask of professionalism, but Derek could see the fury in her eyes. Not at him, at Harland. "Officer Harland, step outside." "Sarge, I didn't know." "Outside." Harland left. Monroe turned back to Derek. "Mr. Vaughn, I am so sorry. Do you need medical attention?" "I need a lawyer," Derek said. Derek's badge number saved his life, not his rights, not the law, not the camera, his badge number. Because in that moment, he stopped being a suspect and became one of us. But what about the millions of Black Americans who don't have a badge to recite? Who protects them when the protectors become predators? By the time the paramedics arrived to check Derek for injuries, Sergeant Monroe had already made 3 phone calls, one to the chief, one to Internal Affairs, and one to the district attorney's office. Derek sat on his couch, an ice pack on his chest, where the taser probes had left burn marks. Nicole sat beside him, holding his hand. They'd been married for 18 years. She'd kissed him goodbye for 22 years of night shifts, never knowing if he'd come home. She'd prayed through 3 officer-involved shootings and 1 stabbing. But she'd never imagined she'd have to fear for his life in his own living room. Monroe sat across from them, her notebook open. "Mr. Vaughn, Derek, I need you to walk me through what happened from the beginning." Derek did, calmly, precisely. Every detail, every word Harland said, every violation of policy, procedure, and constitutional law. Monroe took notes, on her jaw tightening with every sentence. When Derek finished, he leaned forward. "Sergeant, I know how this works. I know how the system protects its own. I know Harland will claim he feared for his safety, that I was aggressive, that the camera doesn't show the full context. But I also know that ring footage is cloud uploaded in real time. I know my wife's video is already backed up. And I know that when this goes public, and it will go public, the department has 2 choices: accountability or cover-up." Monroe met his eyes. "Derek, I give you my word. This won't be a cover-up." "Then I need you to document the following violations," Derek said, his voice steady, his training kicking in. "Unlawful entry without a warrant, probable cause, or exigent circumstances. Deployment of a taser on a non-resistant subject. Excessive force. Some filing a false report, because I guarantee Harland's incident report will claim I was aggressive. And assault under color of authority." Monroe wrote it all down. "And Sergeant," Derek added, "I want that ring footage preserved as evidence, because when I sue, I'm not suing the department. I'm suing him. Personally." Only 2% of police officers are ever charged for on-duty shootings or excessive force. Even fewer are convicted. Qualified immunity, a legal doctrine that shields officers from personal liability, has made accountability nearly impossible. But Derek knew the loophole. If he could prove Harland violated clearly established constitutional rights, qualified immunity wouldn't apply. The taser was about to become the most expensive mistake of Harland's life. The ring footage leaked within 48 hours. No one knows who posted it first. Some say it was a dispatcher. Others say it was a cop who'd filed complaints against Harland years ago and had been ignored. Whoever it was, they uploaded it to YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and Reddit simultaneously. Within 6 hours, 100,000 views. Within 24 hours, 2 million views. Within a week, 8 million views. The footage was damning. Crystal clear 1080p video, perfect audio, time-stamped and geotagged. It showed everything. Harland's aggressive approach, Derek's calm legal citations, the illegal entry, the taser deployment, the handcuffing of a man who never raised a hand in resistance. The comments section exploded. He's in his own house. He literally cited the 4th Amendment, and they tased him anyway. This is what they do to a retired cop. Imagine what they do to the rest of us. If this is how they treat one of their own, what chance do we have? National news picked it up. CNN ran it. MSNBC analyzed it frame by frame. Even Fox News, usually police-friendly, struggled to defend it. Derek received calls from the ACLU, the NAACP, and 3 different civil rights attorneys, all offering to represent him pro bono. He chose the best. Marcus Killian, a former federal prosecutor who'd made a career out of dismantling qualified immunity defenses. The lawsuit was filed 30 days later. The target wasn't the Metro Police Department. It was Officer Scott Harland, personally. The claim, $6.8 million in damages for assault, battery, violation of civil rights, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and punitive damages. The legal strategy was surgical. Killian waived sovereign immunity arguments by suing Harland as an individual, not as an agent of the state. He cited Hope v. Pelzer, 2002, which established that qualified immunity doesn't apply when any reasonable officer would know the conduct was unlawful. And then he deposed Harland. The deposition was a massacre. Harland claimed he feared for his safety. Killian played the ring footage. Harland claimed Derek was aggressive. Killian showed the video of Derek standing calmly, arms at his sides. Harland claimed he had probable cause. Killian asked him to cite it. Harland couldn't. At the end of 4 hours, Harland's lawyer quietly told him to start liquidating assets. In the age of smartphones and doorbell cameras, accountability is no longer optional. It's inevitable. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile. Their names became hashtags because cameras forced America to watch. But here's the question. Why does it take a video to believe black people when they say, "This is what happened"? And what happens in the thousands of cases where there's no camera? The trial lasted 3 days. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. The verdict, $6.8 million in favor of Derek Vaughn, $2 million in compensatory damages, $4.8 million in punitive damages, no qualified immunity, no settlement, no escape. Harland's lawyer immediately filed for bankruptcy protection. The judge denied it. "This wasn't negligence," Judge Reyes said from the bench. "This was malice. This was a violation of clearly established constitutional rights, captured on video, committed by an officer with a documented history of racial bias. Bankruptcy protection does not apply to willful and malicious injury." The implications were immediate and devastating. Harland's house was seized within 30 days. A 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs, gone. The proceeds went to Derek. His pension was garnished. Every month, 50% of his retirement check would go to Derek for the rest of Harland's life. His savings account, his wife's car, even his kids' college fund, all liquidated. His wife, Lisa, filed for divorce 6 weeks after the verdict. She'd stood by him through the trial, but the financial ruin was too much. She took the kids, moved in with her parents, and told Harland she couldn't be married to the man who'd destroyed their future because he couldn't see past his own racism. And then came the criminal charges. The district attorney, like under public pressure and armed with irrefutable video evidence, charged Harland with assault under color of authority, a felony. Harland pled guilty to avoid trial. The judge sentenced him to 18 months in county jail. He served 14 months. When he was released, he was 46 years old, unemployable in law enforcement, bankrupted, divorced, and carrying a debt he'd never escape. He got a job at a warehouse, forklift operator, $16 an hour, 50% of it garnished. Every paycheck, for the rest of his life, would have Derek Vaughn's name on it. Officer Scott Harland lost everything: his career, his family, his freedom, his future, and he deserved it. But here's the uncomfortable question. How many other officers, with the same biases, the same complaints, the same pattern of abuse, are still on patrol right now? And how many Derek Vaughns never got justice because the camera wasn't recording, the footage wasn't leaked, or the victim didn't survive. Derek Vaughn used the $6.8 million to fund a nonprofit, the Fourth Amendment Defense Fund. The mission: to provide free legal representation to victims of unlawful police searches, excessive force, and civil rights violations, to train communities on their constitutional rights, to install free doorbell cameras in low-income neighborhoods where surveillance is most needed but least affordable. He testified before Congress twice. He consulted on police reform legislation in 7 states. He became a national voice, not for defunding the police, but for redefining what it means to serve and protect. "I wore the badge for 22 years, Derek told a Senate committee. "I know what good policing looks like. But this wasn't it." Good policing is built on trust, training, and accountability. Officer Harland had none of those things. And until we make accountability the standard, not the exception, we'll keep seeing the same abuses, the same excuses, and the same communities bearing the cost of unchecked power. His Ring doorbell footage is now used in police academies across the country, not as an example of what to do, but as a warning of what happens when bias, ego, and authority collide. Scott Harland, meanwhile, lives in a 1-bedroom apartment on the East Side. He works 10-hour shifts, Monday through Saturday. He pays child support. He pays his garnishment. He'll be paying until the day he dies. Some people say that's cruel. Derek disagrees. "He didn't just tase me," Derek said in his final interview. "He tased the Constitution. He tased every person who ever believed that their rights mattered. He tased the idea that justice is blind, and for that, the price should be steep." The Ring doorbell that recorded it all still hangs on Derek's front door. Every now and then, he looks at it and smiles. Because now, when someone asks him why he keeps it, he has an answer. Evidence. If you were on Derek's lawn that day, would the officer have circled back twice? Would you have been tased in your own doorway for asserting your rights? The answer to that question reveals everything about who gets to feel safe in America, and who has to record every moment of their life just to survive it. If this story moved you, share it. If it angered you, use that anger to demand better. And if you ever find yourself facing a badge that doesn't respect your rights, so remember Derek's words: "I know my rights. And now, so do you."